A call to order. This is the Audit Committee and Auditor Selection Committee. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Committeeman Gay.
Here.
Gretchen, I promise you I will learn your last name one of these days. Committeewoman Couchcourt.
Here. Good job. That was actually correct.
And Councilman Gamsby is present. Additions, deletions, and/or amendments to the agenda. I think we need to add an item to set a date for our second meeting for the audit. So how is next Monday look for everybody? Assuming it works for the auditor.
What is next Monday?
7.
The 7th?
Yes, I can do that.
I'll go with that.
6 p.m.?
6 p.m.
Okay.
I'll probably try to get the library if I can, just because people will probably want to attend that.
There's some more agendas here. And then
I gave it mine. I don't need it.
Okay, well, I did that wrong, but we got it in there.
Okay.
All right, citizens from the floor. Hey, everybody. You're the real diehards. Come to a routine meeting like this.
We're just gonna let you know we love you.
Thank you.
And we're
So,
glad it's you and not us.
that's right. We'll make this the most viewed video on YouTube.
Comedy Central.
Mixed channel, yeah. All right, so review of the content assignments for the RFP. This should only take a couple of minutes. I started the formatting work for it, so I presented each of you kind of what it's going to look like. Obviously, we'll have a little clean up the section breaks once we actually start developing the content. I pulled in the advice from the guidebook in GFOA so that you can find what each section is looking for based on that. Just on my preliminary review of my own sections, we're probably going to have to move the table of, move some of these sections around once we actually get the content in there. Like the required timetable and deliverables section refers to the timetable and deliverables of the actual audit and not for the RFP. Funny enough, there is no section for an RFP timetable, so I will be adding that. We're also going to have to decide at some point whether we're going to be doing a pre-proposal conference, but we can go over that stuff closer to the time we actually release the RFP. I didn't find anything in my section that I think I will have any difficulty finding the information for, so I don't require reassigning anything at this point.
Where we at?
Well, I went ahead and also drafted a letter for the sections that you assigned me and put how I would, the items I would want in the letter. Is that what you wanted to do?
We can do that. Can I see the? And as I envisioned this meeting, it was mostly to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the sections they took.
Yeah. Well, as I was going through there, I was getting confused, so I just thought I'll just draft up the letter.
I haven't done any
And
drafting.
the sections that you've assigned me, I will put the appropriate information in there. Not that you know that. I won't.
Would you mind? Because that'd be a lot easier
Yeah,
than
no problem.
rewriting it.
And then you can just cut and paste or whatever you want to do, whatever you feel is efficient.
Sorry, what was I drafted out of full?
So I drafted up what I would, if I were drafting the audit,
Yeah.
I mean the RFP letter.
RFP, yeah.
I just did it like that, and that way I was able to keep my assignments
It's just a proposal.
straight and make them
Okay.
flow rather than,
Yeah.
so I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I started on a lot of these. I've got things that are right, I can put them in like order of how they're on here. Like pulling them from other places.
Alright, so you're comfortable with everything you've been assigned?
Pretty much. If I'm not, I can,
We can bring it up at the next meeting.
Yes.
Cause at the rate we're going, we're gonna have a completed RFP 2 months before it'll come out.
Well, if we can pick up 30 days, that would be nice, because I looked at the live vote timetable, and they get their RFPs out almost near the end of the year. What was our schedule, what was our date for?
I mean,
Okay,
what is our date?
what is the, so if we could pick up 30 days, that would,
September 23rd,
Yeah,
is what I saw.
is that the one? I've got them
yeah, that's, well,
in order.
yeah, never mind, okay, I'm standing down on that.
But you know what? It's always better to have more time than less time, so if we can finish it 30 days early, then that's all the better. Okay,
Yeah.
I believe that we have everything squared away then with that part of the meeting. And the only thing left is for us to set a date for when the first draft will be due, for the week of July 21st.
First draft of the
Content, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So get the content, put the content in, and figure out what's missing and what needs to be
July 21st,
that week sometime.
because right now we have it at July 15th.
Well, that didn't
I'm
work
out.
because,
I'm out of town.
yeah.
Okay, 7/21
I'm actually out of town through the 21st, so,
through the 21st.
yes,
Okay,
sorry.
that's right. Congratulations.
You have
I'm
a wife.
I'm actually taking paid time off and going on, I'm leaving the state. I'm actually leaving the South.
That's the way she cannot get away from her job.
Oh, I'm leaving the laptop at home too.
No, you can go through withdrawal.
Really?
Okay, so maybe we
How
have
about-
to move back to the 21st.
About the 24th for the date. Does that work for everybody?
Yes,
Will work for me.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. And we can have first drafts. Can everybody email me their sections that I can solidify them by 7/22,
Mhm.
close of business night, just so I can wake up and have them ready on the 23rd.
Did you, okay, so we're gonna set a date for the next, why don't I go over, I've been talking to, why don't I go over what I have discussed with Mr. Perla before we set a date?
Okay,
Would that be helpful?
it would, because I don't feel like setting a date just to punt it again into the future.
Is this for the audit or the auditors?
This is the audit
This is
itself.
the audit,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I had asked him some questions last week,
Mhm.
and he's gotten back to me on some of those. That's the 6:30, okay. First item was he did have the income overstated. I talked to him about there was $90,000 shown as grant revenue. He has adjusted that to 45. What happened was the town got $90,000 from the county in the current year, but it applied to a payment that they should have gotten last year, and one is for this year, 25. So the 90,000 becomes, of grant revenue becomes 45,000, and it will show up as a receivable at September 30th of 24. That was one adjustment. So the income was overstated by 45,000 is simple. He also added some footnotes. He added section, note number 14, contingent liabilities. He has a paragraph called effluent disposal agreement with Nutrien. And in there, he goes through the agreement that the town has with Nutrien and how that agreement would terminate, how long it lasts, and that there's no liability that you could calculate, but it is something that the town needs to consider. And a user of the financial statement would need to give some deference to if they were trying to do business with the town. He has a note in there about the termination of the interlocal agreement with the sheriff's department. Just that there is a dispute at the moment because the sheriff told us that he intended to, we owed $33,000 and the town says we don't, so you can't unilaterally decide you don't wanna pay a debt if the other side doesn't agree. So that's at least noted as a contingent liability. Right now, if the sheriff, what it causes, the way that it's presented, it's technically understates our expenses by the $33,000. But he's not going to adjust the number, he's just gonna leave a note that there's a dispute about the amount owed to the sheriff's department. And it also involves some return of equipment. It's not just money, it's a return of some equipment that the town had asked for, and the sheriff says that he doesn't think the town will be getting it back. The third note, he added a section on the legislative delegation and the bill that was subsequently was eventually dropped regarding the removal of the town administration and the town council, and that there's negotiation with the former town manager for her release. Those are the three notes that he added. And that's sections 14, 15, and 16.
Those are significant events that could affect it.
Well, note 16 is subsequent events, so it's just, I guess, explaining some of the changes that the town is going through that could affect our ability to perform our duties. The termination of the interlocal agreement makes them aware of a potential debt that might be added onto our books in the future. And the effluent disposal agreement brings attention to a potential liability that could affect the town. But assume those are the purposes.
And we don't.
He also added note 11.
Note 11.
What was that one?
Prior period adjustment, the town failed to recognize certain interfund balances regarding the county's annual sewer payment for lift station at Genoa Industrial Park in the 2023 fiscal year. The impact on balances for the September 30, 2023 financial statements are as follows, followed by a chart.
That's the $45,000 issue.
41 page.
The next thing I asked him about last week, or one of the things I asked him about was, it appeared to me in the enterprise fund at September 30th of 24 that no debt service payments had been made when you compare actual to budget. So I asked him if he would supply the work papers that he used to make the statement that the payments had been made. And so he supplied that to me, and two of the loans, they were clear that they had been made. The third loan, it looks like it wasn't, but I talked to him on the way over here, and it is the way the SRF does their billing and keeps their mortgage, their amortization schedule. And I have this for you, but it appears that instead of recording principal and interest, the SRF or the lender charge things to what's called service fees. So that's why it did not look like the principal and interest had been made. And he's going to send me the same documents for 9/30/23 so we can see that the balance is actually changed. So that will clear that issue up. There's still the issue of I'm done with that. there's the issue of the management representation letter. There's some confusion because there is a management representation letter and there is a management letter. The management letter is a letter from the auditor to the town. It describes the deficiencies that were found and anything else that needs to be noted. That's a letter to the town. And the draft that he gave us, it also was for Mr. Garner in this case, to acknowledge that we had an engagement and there's an amount due. That's different than a management representation letter, which is where the town asserts that we have disclosed everything we know, we're in compliance with all rules, covenants, there's no fraud, there's no, it's a long list.
That's the June 17th letter?
It is the all-encompassing letter, and I'm gonna give you one of those too, Robert, because I have that, a copy to go into the RFP. This is what the town would supply to the auditor. And I'll send you those as well. So, rather than going through all the audit guides and the promulgated rules, this is the synopsis of the difference between the management letter and the management representation letter. Just 4 sentences. A management representation letter is a written statement from a company's management to its auditor confirming their responsibilities and representations made during the audit. In contrast, an audit management letter is a written communication from the auditor to management outlining identified deficiencies in internal controls and other issues. If the auditor does not have a management representation letter from the town, it's considered a scope limitation. It's like you're not giving the auditor all his information. And it, depending on the significance of that, it can be noted in a footnote, or it can cause the audit to be a disclaimer, which is like what we had in 2020. So I don't know how we're gonna resolve that, but I wanted to clear up the difference between the letter that he brought to us for Mr. Garner to sign last week and a management representation letter, which he does not have.
What has he provided you so far, Lee, to sign?
It's the letter saying that what we expect him to do, pretty much.
That's it. It summarizes the engagement, the fee, and that we're gonna give you space to work, all that kind of thing. That's different than I won't send you the management regs.
And then there's a lot of people, a lot of people in the management letters, it has your, what, they found wrong that you need to respond to, so that becomes part of the final audit that goes to the state auditor general's office.
But in the auditor's file, for him to have the opinion, here, I'm gonna just read you some of the things. Significant assumptions we used in making accounting estimates, including those measured at fair value. There were no related party relationships or transactions. Adjustments or disclosures have been made for all events, including instances of non-compliance subsequent to the date of the financial statements that would require adjustment. The effects of all known, actual, or possible litigation claims and assessments have been accounted for and disclosed in accordance with U.S. GAAP. There are no guarantees, whether written or oral, in which regulating district is contingently liable for. We have,
Cheryl's looking for friends, everybody.
it further goes to say, we have provided you with access to all information of which we are aware that is relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, such as records, documents, and other matters. Additional information that you have requested from us for the purpose of the audit. Unrestricted access to persons with the regulating district from whom, which in our case is the town in this letter, from whom you determine necessary to obtain audit evidence. Minutes of meetings of the town or summaries of actions of recent meetings for which minutes have not been prepared. All material transactions have been recorded in the accounting records and are reflected in the financial statements. We have disclosed to you the results of our assessment of the risk that the financial statements may be materially misstated as a result of fraud. We have no knowledge of any fraud or suspected fraud that affects the town and involves management and employees who have significant internal control roles. We have no knowledge of any allegations of fraud or suspected fraud affecting the town's financial statements communicated by employees, former employees, or regulators. We have disclosed to you all known actual and possible litigation claims and assessments whose effects should be considered. So it goes on, but it's very exhaustive. It's essentially the auditor's get out of jail free card if something pops up.
And he can't have Powell sign it, cause Powell's not privy to most of that.
Mr. Powell he doesn't know about all that. He was he's the finance person.
So they made this statement, which is a lie, basically, because this stuff, they did not have access to all this stuff.
Well, he hasn't issued his report yet. That's why, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to accept the report, because he doesn't, I asked him for a copy of this letter, and who executed it, he can't provide it. That means he doesn't have it. And that's why we were having the debate about who could sign it. We don't have it, so now the auditor has to decide, do we have a scope limitation? Because I don't have this letter, and this is all according to the government auditing standards and the yellow book and all that. It's not me making it up, but that's the issue the auditor has. And if we were to accept it, then we would be negligent ourselves, knowing that it doesn't exist.
So then who normally signs it?
In our case, the town manager, the CEO. It has to be somebody with a working knowledge that's been here.
And in our circumstances where we had no town manager and no town clerk and basically an accountant, what do we do?
Well, he will have to decide if he wants to issue his report with a disclaimer opinion, which is essentially not an audit. That's how we got to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee in 2020. Or maybe if he thinks it's insignificant enough to just mention in the footnote that I don't have a management representation letter. That would be between him and his whoever maybe has his malpractice insurance and his attorney. Because given the circumstances that we have here, I don't think he will. I think he's going to want that letter from somebody or do a disclaimer, but that's him.
Are there any cases of examples of this that's happened in Florida before that we could follow through on anywhere?
I'm sure there are, but I don't know of one, and I don't know where to find one. So that's the up to him.
And he didn't get to address the questions of the checks that you were asking about
The
that were
checks.
larger than might have been allowed?
Okay, so that's it for the management letter. I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention. I'm just,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
up to
can we-
the auditor.
So, would it make more sense to not just do an audit and give ourselves another 6 months and hand in something that will pass muster, or to hand it in, as you said, as not an audit?
Well, I don't know what the town's relationship with the town manager is. I mean, so let me answer Mick's question now, because, I asked a question if the gambling license fees of $6,000 were returned to both of the licensees on April 18th. The casinos were shut down on April 10th or 11th. The $6,000 each was returned to the two large casinos and $1,000 to one of the smaller ones. So my question was, if the town manager's signing authority was $2,500, because I recalled that she needed a council meeting to approve her to sign a check for $5,000 for an attorney retainer. That's why I asked the question. I don't recall a meeting between April 11th and April 18th where the town council authorized the return of $6,000 to the licensees. So, Mr. Perla sent me a letter from Vanessa. Vanessa wrote a letter to the two licensees, basically saying you have to read it. And that's where we are on that, so.
Well, that's 11,000, no, 13,000.
14. Six,
It's-
6 times 2 and 1 times 2 is 14.
Which led to another issue. He goes, well, they followed the purchasing procedures. I said, what do you mean the purchasing procedures? Well, the purchasing procedures online are for the city of Jupiter. Jupiter is a much larger town than White Springs.
Do you have the audit response?
The audit response.
I'm asking if you personally have the audit response that Vanessa sent to,
The two licensees.
no, to the audit committee, because that has a copy of our purchasing policies that are for the town of White Springs.
I have Mr. Powell's response.
Does
I
it have
don't
like
messes.
140 pages attached to it?
No.
You want me to send that to you?
Yeah, but Mr. Perla told me that he went on the town website and pulled the purchasing policy off, and when I looked at it, he said she can sign for $50,000. I said, there's no way. And so when I looked at it, it's the city of Jupiter, and he said, well, that's what's online. I said, so you're gonna use that to just, that make you a little curious? Anyway, so that's where we are with that. But if there's another document that maybe he didn't have access to, then that would be helpful. So
But it
yes,
has
if you send
far
it.
more reasonable
But I checked this
levels
afternoon,
than
it says,
$50,000.
it says City of Jupiter right here.
Yeah, no, I'm aware that on our website is some
So
random
So
town
that
thing.
concerns me because that should have been a part of his internal control. I asked him about internal control and he did a study, doesn't make mention of it, but there's no way that that's a valid procurement policy if it's for the City of Jupiter. But he didn't seem concerned about it.
It's not his thing.
And that's all I have. I did, okay, I have one more thing. He did provide the copy of the contract between Powell and Jones, CPA, from the town for the period, for the audits for 2020 and 2021. Mr. Perla told us that he purchased the name Powell and Jones in November of 22, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt that that was November 30th of 22. So that means Mr. firm, Reliant CPA, which he introduced to us last week, did the 21 audit, the 22, the 23, and 24. So the burden was on Mr. Powell or Mr. Perla. I mean, that's one of our findings in the Auditor General report is that we didn't follow the auditor selection process. And now that we have the contract from Mr. Powell and Mr. Perla's statement telling us that he purchased Mr. Powell in November of 22, has to be resolved.
How do you do that?
Well, the handbook has guidance on what you're supposed to do if you had an improper auditor, an auditor that was not selected with an audit selection committee, and that is to seek out a new auditor if it does not put an undue financial burden on the town or cause you to miss your filing date.
We need to go through that process of reviewing the general ledger and look for these same type of things.
How do we get those?
Mr. Powell told me that they're on a hard drive in this office, on QuickBooks. So, there we are.
So I'm gathering.
Why? On these issues?
To talk to the auditor, to,
Well, we need to talk to the auditor about how he wants to handle the lack of, potentially lack of independence. Because Mr. Powell should have no. We were just led to believe it was still the Powell firm, while Mr. Powell is the town CFO, which he started at around October of 22. So since October of 22, we've been led to believe that Mr. Powell was the CFO, but we didn't know there's a difference between Mr. Powell and Powell and Jones CPA, which is, that's contradictory to the independent standards.
These are all statutes.
They're in general accepted auditing standards, they're in what's called the yellow book, which is basically the government auditing guide. Robert's got a few other documents, there's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Well, they probably would not be as much since the records are now corralled. But if we had to get a new auditor, the new auditor is held to the same standard as this auditor, so the fact that
The letter I got from Mr. Powell about the independent stuff.
okay.
It's from the handbook. An entity is notified that its auditor engaged to conduct a financial audit required by section 21839 Florida statutes was not selected in accordance with the requirements of section 218-391 3 through 6 Florida statutes. What should the entity do? The entity should carefully review its auditor selection process. Select the auditor in accordance with section 218-391 3 through 6 Florida statutes. The entity, at a minimum, must subsequent fiscal year audit as required by section 218-391-9 Florida statutes. However, if possible, an audit contract for the current fiscal year has not been executed, or if executed, can be legally terminated without significant financial costs, and there is
We're two separate firms. Mr. Perla's new firm is not allowed to assume someone else's contract. We should have gone through the auditor selection process on November 30th or shortly thereafter, because the 21 audit was not done until a year later. So we had plenty of time. There was plenty of time for the two firms to work that out, work it out with the town, make the public aware that we're switching firms. What?
We still should have a selection committee.
Well, we should have, but I'm just saying that that's the finding of the Auditor General. But the Auditor General didn't have the benefit of the facts that we now have, and the letter that Mr. Powell gave us today is dated June the 27th of 25. So Mr. Powell is not the arbiter whether he was independent or not. The literature says you must be independent in fact and appearance. There was no independence in appearance.
Yeah. He's still on their website as a consultant.
Well, that goes to appearance. So I think well,
variances.
yeah, I just like I did on the 24, I just took the general ledger and I ran my fingers. I said, okay, anything that doesn't my eye catches,
Lee?
I'm gonna come back and investigate.
Do you know where the books are? For which year you're looking for?
The quick, on the computer.
Got some discs floating around, but I don't know.
Well, he has a desktop computer. that they
I
sent
got
me.
those.
Through Audit, those 2 years reside in this office, that he can't supply me that. He did give me the 24 information, that's why I was able to, he did.
Do you have access to Sunithia's computer?
You what?
Do you have access to?
No, but if you go back on the clerk here possibly, I don't know what that feeling about.
Do you have access to the clerk's computer?
Yeah.
Well, I drive quickly if we could produce the reports that we need to do this review.
Can you supervise, Scott going on the clerk's computer?
Probably out of scope of what we need to do right now.
But I can do it Thursday, Mr. Garner. I could do it Thursday.
We'll be here Thursday.
Okay.
What day works for you?
Well, that's right, you could go out of town.
Trying to find my computer, the one that Vanessa had. It's got there's a whole lot of stuff on here that, I just haven't got in.
So it might be easier to get it done next week.
The following Thursday. I'll work it out with Mr. If everyone's okay with that, I'll work it out with Mr. Garner when it works for both of us. It'll take me, and then we can all sit here and go through the exercise in about 15, 20 minutes. I mean, an audit procedure.
How's the 10th looking, Lee?
Huh?
Does the 10th work for you?
July 10?
Let me see if I think so. Let's double check. What time?
You choose. The earlier the better.
Well, I'm here around 7:30 there about.
Okay, so why don't we say July the 10th at 10:30?
7:30. What time?
7:30.
He said he's here starting at
I don't want to be
7:30.
in his hair when he gets here. I mean, there's nothing more aggravating than that. So
Give me time to get a call.
I'll be here when you. I think we should wait till we have that, and then we can have a more informed discussion with Perla and Leslie. We could, I mean, if we have a discussion with Leslie, that doesn't have to be a public meeting, does it?
Nope.
If we do, if you, Lee, and Leslie go, we don't have to.
Okay, so Mr. Garner and myself have.
You'll here.
You'll know what you're hearing.
All right, tell me when I'll be there.
Well, let's look at the ledger first.
You know,
All right, let's take the 7th off the table then.
you don't know it either? Okay.
I don't know how to use QuickBooks.
Now Caleb has been very helpful and he's gotten the information, and he understands that we have to go through this. I told him that we were notified last week the town did not have a working vehicle. He didn't know that. He doesn't know that we have. Do you have a copy of the FMIT policy, schedule of values?
I've got all kinds of insurance, trying to get it renewed.
Yes, sir. But I'm talking about as of September 30th of 24.
But the town hall and the fire department are on the list.
The water tower. The water tower has liability, but there's no property insurance on it. So if it would fall,
Big liability for anybody who lives under it.
you're looking at a $500,000 demo.
Never done that.
Clean. So yeah, I told him that we all along it would not pile up like this, but we were not getting information. So unfortunately,
5 years.
our due diligence. This is our due diligence. Well, next week we'll go over the financials. So by the afternoon of next Thursday, we'll have a good 3 financials. And if there are anything's in there that would impact what potentially would be those audits.
All right, so
8 AM and 6 PM.
Thursday the 10th. Well, I can't go to the 8 a.m.
8 a.m. either.
Well, it looks like me.
Thursday the 10th, 6 p.m. And I'll ask Caleb if he can come, and we'll discuss issues.
Meeting at 6. Okay, good.
So if I found something in the morning, enable him to maybe
Hard
do this
at
with a
ease.
footnote rather than a disclaimer.
Fast track.
Public sector fast track. It'll be done in 3 months.
It works.
I don't have anything else.
Okay, so to recap, the meeting will be Thursday the 10th at 6 p.m. Looking at the QuickBooks and to talk to Caleb. Then after that, we will meet on the 24th.
So Monday.
Y'all are looking for 21, 22, 23, 23, and 23 audit.
No, sir, we're looking for the QuickBooks computer.
And I see that, looks like audit's over here.
You want to terminate the meeting? And
Yeah, let's end the meeting.
I'll just go look and see what he's got.
All right, would someone like to motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to end the meeting. All right, let's bring this to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, or all opposed, say no. Ayes have it, 3-0. It is now 6:44 and the meeting is adjourned.